What's up, everybody? It's me, Retrovin, and we're back with another review. This time we're going to be reviewing Jak X Combat Racing. We haven't really done a lot of Jak stuff recently, so I thought this would be a pretty neat thing to do. So, let's get on with the review, and I'll talk about why I think Jak X is one of the best racing spin-offs any franchise has ever had. Jak X basically starts off with Daxter telling a whole tale about him and Jak's adventures going through a racing thing. The weird, ironic thing about it, though, is that Jak is actually going through what Daxter is saying, but Daxter's saying he's doing it, basically. And it has a really cool intro sequence, and probably one of the best intro sequences in Jak. I don't want to show it because it has copyrighted music, but you can always look it up yourself. It's really good. While Daxter's telling his whole tale, some weird guy named Razor shows up to intimidate him. And then the rest of the gang kind of come up and say, hey, you know, we're gonna take you out. And then that's when the big moment happens.
Wait a minute, it gets better! Really?
Dax, get in the car!
Jak! Are you crazy? You ruined my story!
Now!
Ah! What are you waiting for? Step on it, Jak!
I told you not to go out. We're getting death threats, Dax. Someone doesn't want us here.
You think? I say we take the next boat home.
Not a chance. Hang on!
Jak!
The main story moments actually start off when Jak and the gang are given a poisoned toast. And of all people, it's Crew who Jak and Daxter killed at the end of Jak 2, if you all recall. And basically, Crew's daughter is the one who's doing it. The only issue, though, is that they find out they've been poisoned, so now they have to work in this, well, they have to drive for this car combat sport called Combat Racing, in the title of the game, so it kind of makes sense. So you'll be racing through different places like Crash City and, you know, Haven City, and a bunch of old areas like Spargus as well. The story is actually very interesting. I really like the story of Jak X, even compared to some of the other ones, because the story gets really crazy. Eventually, as you go through the story, old characters return, like Sig, Pecker returns, so it's really cool to see old faces like that. It is too bad that some faces like Onin and, you know, various other characters that we've known in the Jak series don't appear. Some of them make sense, like Errol, of course, because, you know, he died at the end of the third one. But it would have been cool to see someone like Onin again, or various other characters. Overall, though, I think they brought back a fair amount of characters. Each Grand Prix basically involves some different kind of character that Jak has to race. The first one involves UR-86, which is a red robot that was made by Razor, and UR-86 has one of the best robot designs. I mean, it was so good that I made it my profile picture at one point. Then you go against Cleaver, who is another old Jak character that came back, and also a character like Razor. You even go against Razor. Midway through the story, it's found out that Crew actually made a deal with Mizo that if they're able to win the race, Crew's family, which would be Rain, would have control of the city, and Mizo would also give them the antidote to the poison that they got. So basically, Crew put them on a death wish, and that's why they're racing, because if they win the race, that's how they get the poison. It's a very intense game because of that, and it kind of fits the theme of, you know, intense combat racing, because I wouldn't think they'd go on this kind of tournament unless they had their lives on the line, like in this game. Some other important things, too, is that GT Blitz's father was actually a racer. He actually died in the death throne, and that's the thing that he mentions in the plot. He shows a lot of subtle hints of very eerie things that are to happen. There's also Mizo, who at one point actually gives Jak the chance to leave, but obviously Jak explains that he can't quit because, you know, his life's on the line, but he doesn't want to tell anybody that his life is on the line. So it really gets intense. There's also a part where Rain finds out that Jak killed Crew, and Rain basically goes rogue up until the end of the game. So the story has a lot of twists and turns. Now, before we get to this point, because it's a spoiler, I'm about to give the biggest twist to end off the storyline. So be prepared. If you don't want to get spoiled, don't watch forward and go further into the review or something. So, you guys know GT Blitz, the one host in Jack X? Well, turns out there's a big twist to his character that we didn't know.
My way. You broke the rules.
Blitz!
I'm Mizo, and losing the bet changes nothing. I'll crush your family and this whole city. No one else will ever know.
No one except for 200 million viewers, that is.
What?
Smile for the cameras, big boy. Every star has to fall. Right, Mizo?
Ah! You will all die.
And to cap off the story section of this review, turns out Rain wasn't a very good person, because when she gets to the city, Jack and Daxter and, the whole gang see, like, a little hollow recording of Crew that talks about how Rain was never actually poisoned. So basically, she used Jack and his crew, no pun intended, to get control of the city for her father. So now basically Rain has the city, and possibly she's even worse than Mizo. So it makes you wonder if they ever had a sequel to this story-wise. It would have been really interesting to see how they explored it. But overall, this game had one of the best stories in the Jack franchise. I'd argue one of the best, because the story has so many twists and turns and is very interesting. Anyways, though, let's get on to the gameplay now. So the gameplay in this game is pretty simple. You have your basic driving controls. You can go in reverse. You'd have no reason to do that, though. You have your weapons section. So there's two different sections. So you have the frontal weapons, which are your main ones. You have your back weapons, which are mainly for defense. Like if you're defending yourself against other players' attacks, that would be a way. The blue eco that you see is your turbo. So if you notice, each of them are ecos. So you have green eco utilized as health, yellow eco as your main one, red because it's more powerful, like red eco as your attack, and blue eco as your speed. So if you notice, it's really cool because every Jack game has some sort of utilization of ecos, even in its racing spin-off, which I find really cool that like eco is used in that way. This game has many different events too, like Turbo Dash. So basically with Turbo Dash, it actually brings back the power cells, and you have to utilize the power cells as your turbo. And with those turbos, you can basically use them to explode other players. The most shots like you get from them will give you points. So whoever shoots out the most turbo-fueled power cells wins. It's a very interesting game, and it's interesting where it goes because you also have to make sure that you're defending too. So there's a little bit of strategy to that as well. Now, there's two different types of time trial ones. There's time trial, so it's just plain time trial where you're trying to beat your best time. That's only in the exhibition mode, which is the multiplayer. And then there's also the freeze time mode, which is really cool, actually. I never really think about it, but it's actually an interesting mode because basically with the freeze time mode, or freeze rally, I should call it. You basically, depending on these things that you hit, like the 5-1 or the 2-1 or the 1-1, will actually freeze your time for a certain period of time. If I can compare it to anything, it's kind of like the time trials in Crash Bandicoot and Crash Team Racing, where you have different number time trials, and if you hit one, it slows time. So in a way, it's not really referenced, but it's a nice little throwback to the original Crash Team Racing, and shows that Naughty Dog still had that oomph to them in terms of racing games. There's also Death Race, which is basically, it's kind of similar to a shootout mode where you chase after a bunch of CPU cars and you blow them up. They don't attack you or anything, it's more so, if I can compare it, kind of like the gun courses where you're shooting targets to gain points, and you have a bronze, you have a silver, and a gold. So, again, another utilization of classic Jack mechanics but turned into its own sort of thing. Rush Hour is extremely similar to the other one, except now it's just the cars going forward instead. Nothing to write home about. I don't really like this one too much. The game also has a Twisted Metal style arena mode where you could do death matches, capture the flag, sport hunt. There's artifact races, which are kind of like Jak 3. The sport hunts are very similar to fighting against the Metalhead Beast in Jak 3. And you notice that's the theme. It utilizes different mechanics from the Jak series that were utilized in terms of vehicles. Not even just vehicles, but it shows how much they really cared about stuff in the series and what they like to bring to it. I really like the arena sections. In some ways, it's better than the racing sections in different areas because, I like driving in open arenas and doing stuff. Even though the races are cool, I would say that these usually are funner, and for the most part, because there are some very annoying races in the game. Let me just say also, I really like the loading screen because they move. You can actually move it as you're doing it, so I like that. I couldn't really show it off too well because this is like a PS5, so it can't show off the loading screens too great. I guess we can move on to the environment section. So the environments in this game are very vibrant. There's very many environments, or a lot of environments, I should say, because you have Haven City, like I mentioned during the story, you have Spargus, you have Crash City, you have new areas, there's even snow areas, and you never really saw many, actually you never saw any snow areas in Jak 2 and 3, so it's already got it beat in terms of that. And just so many environmental differences. And that's not even just talking about the arenas. The arenas also have a lot of very creative and interesting arenas too. Like you have the desert one. It's perfect for stuff like the artifact races. They have a lot of them are actually newer type ones, but for the most part it's its own thing. In the adventure mode, you have to get like a certain amount of stuff to win. So based on like whether you get bronze, silver, or gold, that depends on how good you do. So you can still get like silver or bronze in certain areas, but like as long as you have a certain amount, like right here I have 58 out of 60 medal points. So that means that I would be all good for the Grand Prix. And it goes that way for all 4 races. So it's cool because it gives you sort of a streamlined feel of the game, which means you don't have to do first place or, get first place, or even second place in some cases in every race, which is nice. In the multiplayer, you can even customize your game modes to your own fitting settings. You can even change the weather to the sky box, because unlike the older Jak games, you can't really, like, the sky doesn't change, so like if it's dark, it's still dark forever, and if it's daytime, it's daytime for the whole race. But in the multiplayer, you can actually set it to your own thing, which is cool. You even have a wide selection of vehicles in the main game too, but in the multiplayer, you can select all of these, including an interesting one called the Daxter Mobile, which you can unlock if you have a save data from Daxter, and Daxter characters as well. You can also unlock an exclusive Ratchet character if you have a Ratchet Deadlock save file. So all the characters you unlock throughout the game as you play it become racers as you get them in the campaign. And, again, like I said, the unlockable racers, you get them as long as you use them. If you have a PS4 or PS5, you unlock Ratchet through the Ratchet & Clank Reimagining, and you unlock the Daxter characters through the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection, just so people know if they ever want to get these characters. I guess with all that stuff out of the way, I might as well talk about the soundtrack, which I don't like all of them because I'm not much of like I guess you could say rock and roll music kind of guy, but a lot of them are nice because they do have like an electronic feel to them, which is a nice mix in my opinion. Well, everybody, that was my review of Jak X Combat Racing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Overall, it was a very good game, and honestly, I'm even saying this over Crash Team Racing. I think Jak X is my favorite racing game, just because it brings in a lot of the edginess and intenseness of the Jak 2 and Jak 3 games, and brings a lot of mechanics from it into a racing environment. And while I like Crash Team Racing, that game was kind of more of a regular kart racer. This one is more extreme with the Jak mechanics and, you know, stuff that you would recognize from the games involved. So overall, I'd say Jak X is a really good game. Definitely not as good as, you know, the platformers at all, but very good for a racing game, I'd say. Anyways, though, I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Jak X Combat Racing, and you all have a good one. I'm out. Peace.